Well, folks, here we go. Another video from Sam. There's just so much going on, and I don't want to miss updating you on it and updating you on the importance of it. And these require separate, videos and offerings. So you see Saturn in Pisces. This is just huge. I haven't really done it, just a dedicated. I usually do like a 90-minute web class, and that's what I'm going to be telling you about today because it's a gigantic shift. It says hard truths in soft waters. Anchoring the Invisible, March 29th through May 2027. So this is a huge shift that's happening now in the midst of all the eclipses that we're talking about. The biggest thing that comes in really next and the most enduring is that Saturn is going to set up in Pisces. This would be a gigantic thing, even if we weren't so preoccupied with eclipses. So again, as I always do, when Saturn or the nodes change signs, I have a free class that I'm going to be giving people. And I'm doing that as well now. If you go to saturnshift.com, you can register for it. And it's going to be March 31st at 6 p.m. And then the recording will be available at least for a while. But today I'm going to be talking about this big shift of Saturn moving into Pisces. And by the way, on this web class, I'm going to be focusing on Saturn and the moon. So you might be like, oh, Sam is doing what it means for all 12 signs. Yeah, by the way, I started that like 10 years ago. So now everybody does it, but we'll leave that aside. But I'm actually focusing on the moon and Saturn's influence on the moon in this one, because in this class that I'm going to be teaching, it's also going to be focused on the dreaded Sade Sati, right? The dreaded Sade Sati that everyone has in their life, where, and you see I have a test thing here. This isn't a real email address, by the way, but where everyone has their dreaded Sade Sati, and people are now thinking, oh, Saturn is moving into Pisces. So that means because my moon is in Aries, my Sade Sati is starting, and all of this Sade Sati. Everybody knows everything about Sade Sati, all the, astrologers who've been doing it for, decades. So I'm going to be talking about this and breaking it down in a way that's actual and real, and not just with a lot of fear and, projection, because there's a lot of things that we really need to know about this shift and how Saturn really influences the moon, how Sade Sati is also, again, it's a thing, but you have to understand, is it going to be 7.5 years? Is it going to be 2.5 years? Is it going to, which portions are going to be influenced? Because it's based on a very simple but powerful principle that I'm also going to explain. And again, it's going to teach you more than just, what does it mean for you? But it is going to also teach you what it means for you, right? Each of the 12 moon signs. For example, mine is in Libra. Okay, so how is that related to Saturn going through Pisces and moving from Aquarius into Pisces? So again, very profound teaching. Again, it's basically an 1.5-hour class that you get for free. So if you are interested in taking your studies a little deeper, you can do that. And so we're going to get into this now, this Saturn in Pisces, and in general, what this means. And again, we're going to get into a lot here today. Again, make sure to subscribe, get notified, and leave me a positive message. That really helps. So we have this big shift happening. And I've explained, recently how we can start to feel, because Saturn is at the last degrees of Aquarius now. And when planets get to the very last degrees, it's like their karma with that energy is, sort of finished. For example, like they start to feel like, okay, this is now winding up. This is wrapping up. This is ending. Think, for example, like when you have to move, right? You have to move and you're still living in one place, and you've already, let's say, bought the next house, and you're in transition. You're not there yet. You're still in the place that you are, and you're about to go into the next place. There's all this transition time when, everything kind of goes a little haywire. where you're not as, and not as authentic in your routines, your habits, even your diet gets a little weird. You're like, well, I can slide. I'm dealing with so much anyway. I'm already moving, so I can, eat some fast food and do this and do that because I'm, in transition, having to drive back and forth. I'm out of my routine. You want to think of a planet changing signs as being that type of energy. And Saturn it's really about a month. It's really about 2 months. It's about a month on each side of the sign that he's moving from and moving to before that energy gets really settled. And even then, it takes a while. Saturn, it's a 2.5 year transit. So this last month or so, let's say, Saturn has been basically preparing for the next house that he's going to live in, right? So the last month or so, Saturn has been wrapping up the Aquarius. It's like, okay, we've been there. We've been through the Saturn in Aquarius where we're really bringing this pressure to bear on our collective identity, our collective relationship with each other. And Aquarius is very big in the sense of feeling a commitment to things like, politics and culture and how and the global implications of things, how it's not just about me and what I want, or even just me and my government kingdom, which is Leo, but how is the collective, how are we all connected? Saturn through Aquarius was really that kind of referendum on that. Now, Saturn, and that's in the sort of socio-political world. Internally, though, it's also a thing where we all have been focusing on, okay, what's going to happen with the world? Now, we've gotten a bit of an answer, we can see, and it's like, okay, all of our collective connections that we've seen are dissolving. We're seeing them dissolve right now. We're watching. We see what's coming. We see there's a big dissolving coming where nothing is going to be what we thought it was going to be. Maybe to you, it's, and again, I'm talking about the world because we can see these things around us. This is the world you've waited for. And yes, it's time for that old world to dissolve. Let's get rid of I'm just going to use sort of political terms, particularly here in the West. Let's get rid of that wokeism. Let's dissolve all of this structure. And by the way, you can see it very clearly in the politics of the U.S. right now. We have a president who has installed someone to just dissolve the government, basically. Like, just get rid of it. And then you have people saying, no, we don't want to dissolve the government. We don't want to get rid of the Department of Education. We don't want all these structures, social structures, financial structures to just dissolve and go away. Wait a minute. So on a social level, we're seeing this kind of reset. And think of the thing of dissolving, because Saturn in Pisces is the dissolving. Look at these taglines: hard truths in soft waters, anchoring the invisible. These were some ideas I came up with the help of AI, which, by the way, this is a big thing. I'm gonna do a whole video just on the social implications. This is kind of in between, but things like AI can be very useful tools. They're very helpful, and you can plug something in. Like, I plugged in a prompt: give me a few metaphors. Give me 10 metaphors that would indicate the power, duty, commitment structure of Saturn with the dissolving influence of Pisces. And it gave me about 10 of them. And these were a few, right? So we can use these emergent technologies. I'm trying to see things in a very neutral way. Again, there are some people who it's the greatest day of their life that all this stuff is dissolving, that they were all just the trappings of wokeism or whatever people might be saying. 1 second. There are people who that's their worldview. Again, 1 second. And then there are others who are saying, yeah, it's all getting dissolved. All this money and all these things are getting dissolved so that all the rich people can take it all from the rest of us. By the way, I happen to fall down in that category and something in between. Of course, you need to dissolve the things that need to go away, but the problem isn't that things are getting, let's say, there's the idea of waste, fraud, and abuse can also be used as an excuse to like say, oh yeah, waste, fraud, and abuse over here. So let's get rid of $10,000 over here so we can steal 10 million over here. Anyway, so, but we see the contentiousness around these worldviews, and they're basically worldviews happening now. And so this is a big part of what's going on in the world. Now, our inner world is very different because this Saturn is going to pick up and, lay claim here to a place in Pisces that falls from each of our signs. And that's influencing a different aspect of life from the ascendant. And again, one thing in this free class, this 90-minute class, I'm basically talking about the effect of Saturn on the moon and of feelings and emotions and consciousness. They're different. Again, I get asked all the time, are these transits from the moon or blah, blah? The texts say the moon. The moon is, when we read transits from the moon, we're reading how it feels to us. That's what the moon is. You can read everything from the moon if you want to know how it feels to you. If you want to see the areas of life that it affects, like your work, your career, or your relationships, or whatever, you read those things in the world from the ascendant. You read the effect on your feelings from the moon. And that includes all the different aspects and whatnot as well, which is what I'm going to talk about in this class. Because again, it's very likely, like for example, Saturn is moving into Pisces, okay? So it's opposite Virgo. That's an aspect. So it's going to be bearing down on that for sure. And other things. It might not be Sade Sati, but it could be this. So this is what you want to find out. What are those places? And aside from those aspects and influences, like I have the moon in Libra, it's not doing any aspect or influence in that way, but it's still the 6th house from my moon. So what does that mean? So that's what we're going to talk about. But aside from that, Saturn is going to set up in this sign of Pisces and influence a literal area of life. Like for me with the Gemini rising, it's going through my 10th house. So there will be a 10th house dissolving, restructuring, and anchoring the invisible and the hard truths and soft waters for me taking place in my career, in my work, in my duties, responsibilities. What are the hard truths I've had to face? And again, I've been talking about this for a while. We see it coming. The reason we've seen it coming is because we've had all these planets in Pisces. Rahu has been in Pisces since the end of 2023. So we've had this. In fact, it's in many ways, it's quite a blessing because we're not getting blindsided like, oh my God, I didn't see that coming. We've seen it coming because we've been having this dissolving influence going on for a year, all of last year. Now the pressure is getting turned up even more. But that aspect in that area of your life, if you've listened to me at all recently, you've heard me say there are things that just aren't coming back. They're gone and you need to let go of them. And the ones who are really suffering are those who are saying, but no, I want this old thing. I want this old job that AI replaced to come back. It ain't coming back if AI replaced your job, for example. It's like saying, I want those horse and buggies. They're gone, right? So, and I'm talking about literal things, but it could be, again, certain relationships, certain connections you've had. Certain things are gone. And if you try to hang on to them, it's like trying to hang on to water, through your hands. So this concept of hard truths and soft waters is the part that I really like about this. Because you don't have to struggle against anything. You don't have to struggle against anything. You have to be pliable. Saturn is the structure in our life. But structure is just one part of life. It's and when we don't have it, or the areas like we're so dependent upon false structures And I say false. And again, sometimes people just don't like it. I did a thing about, about time and how time isn't real. And there were people that protested, and I explained it very distinctly. Time is how the ego works. The ego operates in time. Saturn is literally even the maker of time. It's called Chronos in Greek. Chronos is the word for time. Saturn is the impact of time in our mind. But time is past and future in that context. But it's also timelessness, which is the present, not the past, not the future. The ego needs time to scheme and plot and plan and worry and control. Without time, the ego has nothing to do, nowhere to go. It dissolves. That's why Saturn can be the thing that stresses us out, because we're worried about what to do in the future. We're sort of crippled in the present because we remember all of the mistakes of the past and the abuse of the past. So we're helpless in the present to make a better future again. So Saturn is how these things really can weigh on our minds psychologically. And again, I'm going to break these things down also in very, very, great detail on this class, SaturnShift.com. But just, you can understand that very clearly. But the ego needs that time. You're not the ego. You're not that past or that future. Even just in reality, time isn't reality. The present is reality, but the present is not time. So Saturn is the doorway into that presence as well, because Saturn takes the pressure of time and collapses it into the simplistic moment of silence, stillness, peace, actual liberation, because it's where we realize that all of these schemes are futile eventually. So again, these hard truths aren't even really that hard, especially if you're willing to surrender the idea that, no, that abuse was real and I get to be angry and I'm justified in being fearful and it's real. That's the ego. Yeah, I get it. To your ego, it's real. And if all you know is the ego, then that's all you know is that reality. But that doesn't mean that's all there is. It means that's all you know. So if you're willing to let go of that illusion, again, I say illusion, I don't mean it isn't real. It's not the ultimate reality. If you want that to be your ultimate reality, then hang on to it. And watch how hard it is when Saturn goes through Pisces. Because Pisces is trying everything. It has been for the last year to shed you of unreality. But instead, what we want to do is escape into fantasy, because letting go of that false reality can be more scary than what's next. This is the old saying of the devil I know is better than the devil I don't know. Just try to take that pain and suffering away from people and watch how much they resist. Just like I said, when I made a post about time and whatever, people just couldn't wait to show up and argue with me. Oh, but it's real. You shouldn't say that. You're bypassing blah, blah. I always hear the same thing. It's like, okay, hang on to it. I didn't say it is real. I'm saying it's not the only reality. Of course, your body is real. Your emotions are real. They're just not the only level of reality. If you just want to live at that level of reality, then hang on to them as defining you. If you're defined by those things, then you get to try to support it and hold it up. And Saturn is the energy that's the basis of your reality structure, of your identity structure. Reality structure is really Saturn, because it's how you live through time. And it's about to get dissolved whether you want it or not. So learn these, try to really understand these things. And again, we've had some good practice because we've had all this Pisces energy for the last year and a half. And we're going to have Saturn Rahu, because then there's going to be the question in the comments, what about Saturn Rahu conjunction for 2 months? Yeah, it's going to be these concepts are going to hit like a ton of bricks. These hard truths and soft waters are coming. We could see in the next even week or two major things. It could be my thing. I'm worried about the potential for a global financial catastrophe, particularly with what the U.S. president is doing, monkeying around with all these trade agreements. That was the biggest thing that I was afraid of anyway, aside from not him as a person, but the incompetence, the ignorance. The entire world is saying, will you stop these ridiculous tariffs or threat of tariffs? They're on, they're off, they're on, they're off. We just had an incredibly dangerous, security leak with amateurs running the most powerful country in the world. This is an absolute, emblematic result of Saturn on the verge of things dissolving. Like, people are like, what are we doing now? Like, just slowly marching into economic catastrophe, it seems. And everybody just seems to be sitting back and going, well, he won the election. Well, he won. Well, what are we going to do? Wow, well, what can we do? And it's just like, what do you mean, what can we do? Got to be able to do something, right? Something's going to happen. You can guarantee, you can see it. Something's going to happen. And that's just what we can see, let alone what we can't see. It could be these infectious diseases, these pandemics, of course, right? We have Bobby Kennedy running CDC. We've already seen the kind of things that he's done, right? Let's see how they're going to work. What happens if we do get another, pandemic or something like that? Of course, it's possible. Anything's possible. So we've put a group in, again, this Saturn moving through Aquarius is the public saying, okay, here's what we're committed to. And then Saturn moves into Pisces and goes, okay, now watch that dissolve. So again, I'm trying to be as apolitical as possible, but yeah, like most, I'm definitely worried about what we've put in charge. I knew it was not going to be good, but man, all of a sudden, right, who knows what's coming next. So on the global level, we have that. On the personal level, though, you're also experiencing the uncertainty, and these hard truths in soft waters are and trying to anchor the invisible. Like, we're trying to, again, like, okay, here we go. And it's like, but it's like trying to build a bridge where you're on one shore of hard ground, and then the other side of the bridge or of the shore is invisible. Where do you build it? So we're all feeling this vulnerability. And again, if you found this to be compelling and you want to know more about this comprehensive shift of how Saturn is going to affect you, especially emotionally, psychologically, really understanding the nature of Saturn, of Pisces, Saturn in Pisces, the moon, and how it generates a lot of emotion, especially if you're worried about like Sade Sati or other influences. This is very grounding. Again, it's a 90-minute course. I could charge $50 for the thing. I mean, again, these are deep teachings, not just YouTube videos. So again, if it's valuable to you and you really want to know the knowledge, learn it. It'll be a handout, and it'll be a professional class taught by someone who's been doing it for 20 years, full on professional. I've been doing a couple hundred readings a year for more than 20 years. So I'm not just winging it when it comes to these things. It's a lot of experience. So if that's interesting to you as well, check it out. And we're all in for a fun ride. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel.